Dr. Catherine Nichols will join us to discuss and answer questions about the Abortion Access Initiative expected to be on the ballot in 2024. She has spent the last 11 years working with the Arizona List to get women elected to local, county, and state offices in Arizona. She has a master's in women's study, a PhD in social welfare, and decades of experience in Arizona, and especially Arizona politics, running statewide initiatives, congressional campaigns, and her favorite work, helping progressive Arizona women change the state. So what a wonderful body of work. And Catherine, we appreciate all you've done and all you're gonna do. So please, let's give her a nice warm welcome.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So some of you have heard me speak and some of you are going to hear me speak. We have a big year ahead of us. As you all know, 2024 is not going to be easy. And particularly in Arizona, we are going to be the epicenter of a lot of battles. But I want to start by just telling those of you who I don't know in the room, although I see some good friends from years past. So my name is Kathy Nichols, and I grew up on politics in Arizona. My father first ran for state legislature in 1982. After, at that point, House Minority Speaker Art Hamilton came down and took my father and myself out to lunch and said, "Andy, we need a doctor in the house." And so he thought it was a great idea. We knew nothing. We lost spectacularly. And it was a good family experience. And we said, never again. In 1988, the seat opened up again. He got brave again. That one was much harder. By then I was in high school. I was running the campaign with some good friends in Tucson, and Denise Lefkowitz, if any of you remember Denise. And we worked super hard and lost by 203 votes. And that one was painful because you can always think of the 100 people that you could have talked to move it one way or another. Fast forward again to 1992. Again, there was an open seat because of redistricting. And at this point, my father ran, George Cunningham ran, and he made it in. And as we like to say, third time is a charm, but it was an extraordinarily competitive seat. And so one of the things that he had to do was really to tailor a presentation and an argument to voters that would appeal to both sides while staying true to his values, which, as some of you know, were far, far to the left. In fact, he got the back left seat both in the House and the Senate, and he was always proud of it because he was the furthest to the left. He served for 4 terms in the House, was termed out, ran for the Senate, and then he died in office at the legislature at the Senate building. So we feel like he really gave his life to Democratic politics in a lot of ways. And during that time, one of the things that he was famous for saying is that there are no compromises that can be made about certain issues. And one of those issues is healthcare. And so that is part of the reason that I'm here today, is that we have become seriously compromised on the issue of healthcare, and in particular, healthcare for women. And since the Dobbs resolution, healthcare for women in this country, particularly for all people of childbearing age, has become a guessing game based on what state you live in and what rules are enforced that day. That is a terrible way to have your healthcare decided. And it is causing stress, no undue amount of mental stress, of emotional stress, and of course, if you follow any of the cases, like I tend to, of the women in Texas or the women in Oklahoma or just here in our state, the physical distress of women who have been forced to carry out pregnancies with non-viable fetuses, and in general, to be forced to make decisions that were counter to their own health care, to the point of near death before there could be medical intervention. And this isn't a pretty story. And what it's required is that we do some brave things. And one of the brave things is that we start talking about abortion as abortion. So some of you on this call know we had a speaker just last week for Arizona List, Dr. Taylor, who is an abortion provider in the Phoenix area. And she said, we all need to get braver about talking about abortion as healthcare. This is something that is going to be very difficult, especially for, I would say, a certain generation that just didn't use it, to use that term, and tended to talk about choice. But as we help people to understand that abortion is healthcare, then we are able to help people understand why it's a necessary medical right in this country. So a group of people have been working together. Now, some of you know when the Dobbs resolution took place, there was a group of great Tucsonans who gathered together and tried to get something on the ballot. It was the Arizonans for Reproductive Freedom. And they made a heroic effort. They did not get the signatures they needed. They only had a 7-week window. So that, though, meant that we missed the 2022 cycle and we had some time. So a group of organizations has gotten together, including the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, NARAL, Affirm, which is our Title X statewide organization that works with reproductive rights and also with birth control, and Arizona List, to talk about what could potentially be done to respond to the fact that Arizona went all over the map after the Dobbs resolution. Some of you followed. We went from having no abortion whatsoever because we weren't sure if the territorial ban was going to take place, to a judge determining that we would have the 15-week ban that had been passed by the legislature as our laws, to right now we're waiting for September 11th for another hearing, which may put us back to the territorial ban. So been very difficult for providers, very difficult for patients, and the laws keep changing. So we've been talking about what we could do, and we had a couple of commitments. The first commitment was that all of us represent organizations with lots of members, and many of you here on the call are members of Arizona List. I want to say thank you. We could not do this as individuals because this is going to take a lot of effort from a lot of people to get the signatures we need. NARAL has a lot of members. Planned Parenthood has a lot of supporters. ACLU has a lot of members. And we have been talking to other organizations with members, Indivisible, Amnesty International, all of them, to get them together to agree to put forward a ballot initiative on the 2024 ballot. And the first thing we wanted to figure out is, should it be a statute or should it be a constitutional amendment? So we went back and forth and back and forth. Statutes are easier because you need to get less signatures, about 100,000 less signatures. So it's cheaper. However, the legislature has a tendency to overturn statutory initiatives pretty easily because they can simply refer something to the ballot and it's there. We as citizens have to collect signatures to put something on the ballot. But it is harder to turn over a constitutional amendment. The other thing that we wanted to look at is what were other states doing. And Michigan and Ohio were both looking at constitutional amendments. So we have, as some of you may know, if you listen to Chris Mays on the stump, we have a privacy amendment in our Constitution, Section 8, which refers to the right to privacy. And so we decided that we would look at that right and put an amendment to the Constitution within that category of right that would ask for abortion to be a right protected in the Constitution of the state of Arizona. So we are in the process of working on language for that now. There are lawyers from all of these respective organizations sitting together and hammering out what the best language will be. And then once it goes to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, it has 30 days for review, and then we will be collecting signatures. Now, as I said, a constitutional amendment needs more signatures than a statutory amendment. And currently in Arizona, a constitutional amendment needs 383,923 signatures. That's a lot. 384,000 signatures. When you think about validity, people that don't know whether they're registered to vote, people who put the wrong address, people who sign the wrong way, we need probably 500,000, possibly 600,000. Whatever that is, it's a lot. And it will be the largest number of signatures that we've ever had to gather in the state of Arizona. And so that means we're going to need every single volunteer that we can get to collect signatures. And all of you are going to have to be brave and go out of the Democratic circles that you're in to collect signatures with populations that are not just on this call. Because we're going to need independents to sign, we're going to need Republicans to sign. The good news about an initiative is it's a nonpartisan signature gathering process. So all they have to do is be a registered voter in the county that you're collecting in. And you can have a Maricopa County petition, you can have a Pima County petition, but we will be doing trainings to help people learn how to be good signature gatherers in the coming months. We are hoping to have petitions by the end of September. And then the signatures are due on July 3rd, 2024. We hope so too. We hope that there are going to be a lot of volunteers that come out there, because the general rule of thumb with an initiative petition that is circulated by a volunteer is that it is roughly 80% valid. And why is that? Because you ask the question, are you a registered voter? Are you registered in Pima County? And so you get that signature. A paid gatherer sometimes doesn't bother to ask that because they get paid by signatures. Although now that's not legal, now they get paid by the hour. But anyway, they have certain expectations that incentivize not asking the detailed questions that volunteers ask. And so their rate of validity is much less. So we would like to have as many volunteer signatures as possible. And yes, we want to get them into people's hands as quickly as possible. But here's the deal. There are 3 ways that we can fail as an initiative. The first way is we cannot get enough signatures. The second way is that we can get enough signatures and then get kicked off the ballot because our legal language is not tight enough. And that's what we're trying to avoid by having a lot of lawyers and a lot of input to make this language as tight as possible so that the legislature cannot take it apart. And then the third way is we can lose at the ballot box. So one of the things we did before we even put this initiative, started drafting this language, is we did polling. And we're really grateful to Planned Parenthood, who funded 2 polls to look at what would voters be willing to support, because we did not want to do all this effort to lose at the ballot box. And what we found is that actually people are with us on abortion. And we know this also from Michigan, we know this from Kansas, we know this from Kentucky, we know this hopefully from Ohio. We'll see how that special election goes tomorrow. But we know that people support the Roe standard, and they support people having a right to make a decision about their pregnancy. Where we have people diverge is the way that the right has managed to frame what's called late-term abortions. And that's where people get a little bit like, well, I don't know, I think that it probably should have some limits on it. And so when we did polling and we looked at what would pass, we tried an initiative that was just pure, everything goes, complete and total abortion access. That did not pass in Arizona. It was too close for comfort. It was like 50%. But then if you had arguments, it slid down. What did pass was people having the Roe standard plus a little. So they had basically a right to abortion until viability, with a clear definition of viability from Planned Parenthood, not from a right-wing doctor, not from, but a definition that would actually talk about, you know, a 32-week pregnancy or a 30-week pregnancy, rather than what has happened in some states. So that language is still being ironed out right now. I wish I could share it with you. It will be ready shortly. Maybe it'll even be ready, Lucy, for Saturday. But for right now, it isn't. So all I can tell you is that it is coming, and it is coming soon. And that what we need for all of you is to think about your own lives in October, November, December, January, and to think about having a petition in your car, like I said, being brave and taking it to everything you go to, not just drinking liberally, but also take it to the supermarket with you, take it to any public place you go to, take it to a dinner party, have the conversations, because the reality is that we are at a really critical point. And I'm not sure if she's here. She is. You know, we have doctors who know how critical this issue is, and I won't name names, but I do hear from doctors stories all the time about how important it is, because here in Arizona, we have people going to the hospital in stages of distress, in later stages of pregnancy, and not getting assistance that they need. And so this is, it's pretty critical. All right, that is a quick summary. I want to open it up for questions. I saw a few in the chat, which I can grab. But I also want to say, if there are other questions, I am happy to answer them. So the question about Down syndrome, it's just a question about when you are, how far along you are in the pregnancy. Right now in Arizona, we have a 15-week ban.
Mhm.
So if you are less than 15 weeks pregnant, then yes. And if not, then you need to go to another state.
Yeah, there's also a restriction on use of abortion for sex selection in Arizona.
Yeah. There are actually 44 what they call trap laws. These are ways in which the state of Arizona, and particularly the legislature in Arizona, has tried to make life miserable for people who are looking to receive abortion services. And they are everything from the 24-hour waiting period, to the doctor who does it having to have hospital privileges, to ultrasound beforehand, you know, all sorts of things that make it more difficult to practice. One of the ideas had been to simply say a statute that says we take off all those trap laws. But that violates our single subject rule in the state of Arizona. And so we needed to look for a different way to do that. And if we have a guaranteed right in the Constitution, then maybe some of those trap laws can actually be legally argued. Gail, you had a question.
Gail, you have a question.
Make sure that they are available at the Pima County Democratic Party offices.
Yep,
Thank you.
for sure, for sure.
I'll
And
be the petition queen.
great, that is exciting, Gail. And we work really closely with Shelley, so we will be sure that she's got them.
Great. Mike, do we have any questions in the chat room?
Not yet.
Craig has a question for you, Catherine.
And I found one in the chat too.
Okay, great.
Yeah, maybe this question's a little bit naive and requires a lawyer to answer, but could the state legislature be held responsible for practicing medicine without a license?
No.
You know, that's a great question, Craig, because I will say, and we have former Representative Pickens here, so she knows. The legislature in Arizona, when I explain to our interns what they do, I say basically they educate, medicate, and incarcerate. Those are the three things that the state legislature does that are different than, say, your city council or your county supervisors. So they are in charge of our education, they are in charge of our healthcare systems, and they are in charge of our prison systems. And the bulk of our legislation falls within those things, including licensure, unfortunately. But yes, I think that by making decisions about healthcare choices, there are cases going on right now in Texas about whether or not the legislature had the right to do the complete ban that Governor Abbott signed in that has caused extraordinary damage. And one of the questions that has been asked every defendant, because they have 11 women now who've had terrible pregnancy situations, testify, including one of them that actually physically got ill on the witness stand as she tried to describe having a fetus without a skull. The lawyers asked them specifically, did the state tell you that you couldn't have an abortion? So the state was defending itself by saying, we didn't tell the women directly. We weren't a doctor directly. We just made this broad policy, but it's really the doctor's fault, which I thought was an interesting abdication of responsibility.
Okay, and we have a question from Susie Anderson.
I was wondering, we've been trying to get the ERA passed ever since it was proposed. And how far are we from getting that done so that women are equal citizens to everybody else and therefore have our rights? And would that impact all of these abortion problems?
Yeah. I mean, that is a great question, Susie. And I think, actually 2 years ago, Virginia became the 32nd state that authorized the ERA. And there was an idea that if 32 states ratified, then it would move into law. But then it went to Congress, and there was a question about how long it had taken and whether the first state's ratification still held. And as far as I know, it's in this sort of netherworld right now of nobody knows whose judicial responsibility it is to move it forward. And I am not an ERA expert. I just know that that's where the last time I paid attention, it left off. What I would say is that what's interesting about the polling on the abortion initiative is that men are very supportive because they don't like the idea that rights have been taken away. And it doesn't matter that these are not rights that they could have, especially in Arizona. People don't like to have the government tell you what to do. And this is where we get our crossover votes. When you break it down by ethnicity, because they did do that in the polling, what was interesting is that in certain communities, particularly the Latinx community, the strongest message was not about rights being taken away. It was about trusting women. And there was a feeling that women should be trusted to make those decisions. So I think as we circulate petitions and you are looking at the person who is talking to you, you might take a quick glance and say, guy who's independent, maybe he's at the DMV. I might use that you don't want the government to take your rights away, do you? Even if they are theoretical rights for him, where you might use a different argument when you're looking at someone at Food City, where you're talking about, that we want to let women make decisions for themselves. So I think you're going to just need to sort of evaluate as you go through, decide which conversation fits your population that you're talking to, and particularly You know, to some degree, there are going to be different arguments that sway different people. Obviously, Democratic women are probably the most supportive of all of our populations. But independent women are with us on this also.
Very good. And Lori Cinnamon has a question for you.
Yes, thanks. It's not actually a question. I hope you'll bear with me. I make this statement. In 22, in June or July of 2022, I'm a notary. So I was at headquarters notarizing reproductive freedom petitions as they were coming in. And I have never seen so much enthusiasm. People came in. They don't even know how they got the petition. They were mailed the petition. They had never collected signatures before. Some of them said, I didn't even know how to do this. Someone who was signing my petition told me I have to stay in the lines. There was so much enthusiasm. So I just want to share this story to let everybody in this room know that I know that 84,000 is a big number. 500,000 is an even bigger number. But this is a very popular issue, and there's a lot of energy out there we can harness. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I will say, for those of you, if you are really committed to working on this, being a notary is one of the ways in which you can really help, because with this many signatures that we need, we will also need to make sure that we have notaries who can notarize those petitions. And so I know in the Arizona List team, we are going to have a couple people in our office who will be taking the notary training this month and becoming notaries. And I know that it's, and I'm so happy, Lori, that you will be ready to do this. So I think the more that we have, the easier it is for people to collect their signatures and get them turned in. You know, in a dream world, we would be able to collect all of the signatures before it gets hot. Because the truth is, it's not that fun to go out signature collecting in June. It will be nice if we could get this all done by May, but we'll see what happens. Yes, and thank you, Mary. We will have talking points, and we will have a whole kit for everybody who collects signatures so that you are able to circulate with information about the initiative.
Great. And Mike Bryan either has a question or something from the chat room.
I have several questions backed up in the chat. Ellen Parrish wants to know, have organizers parsed out how many volunteers are going to be needed and how many signatures each must gather to reach the 500K signature threshold? She says it'd be helpful for her to measure her own efforts.
Sure. So here's what we know. We know that the more signatures that we get, the less likely we are to be kicked off the ballot. We also know from our polling that if we define the argument and if we get the message out there first, we have a stronger ability to keep people on our side supporting the initiative. Paid signature gatherers are not as persuasive as all of you are.
Yeah. And
they are expensive. So we have a scenario with paid signature gathering firms for 20% from volunteers, for 30% from volunteers, for 50% from volunteers, for 75% from volunteers. Like, we have the different variations. Each of those costs a different amount of money. The more we get from volunteers, the less we have to get paid, the more we have resources to use for the campaign. So all of this to say, we have a variety of scenarios looking forward. We are hoping that what Lori said is true, and the enthusiasm to regain these rights will have maintained. Americans have a very short memory, though. And if you are not of childbearing age, you may not know how important this situation is. We're going to have to remind people and build enthusiasm back up again, because it's been a whole year since Dobbs. And so what has been a concern for us is, where is the enthusiasm? Now, I will say Ohio, and Michigan both got 35% of their signatures from volunteers. My personal goal is that we show them that Arizona is better and we get 50% of our signatures from volunteers. I would like us to get 250,000 from volunteers because that means that we just have that much more validity. And if those of you who have followed the drama around the Outlaw Dirty Money initiative, what you have to do with paid signature gatherers when you get to the point of registering those signatures with the Secretary of State is they all have to come and stay in hotels and be interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the case for volunteer signatures. So paid signatures, on top of costing money for collecting signatures, you also have to track them and then have them there. And if they disappear, then you can't count their signatures. I mean, it's like a whole nightmare. So the more volunteer signatures we can have, the less we have that nightmare.
Yeah, I think there'll be very little trouble in getting volunteers for this based on the enthusiasm we had last time around in 22. Sue Heck wonders if there's a resource we could go to that would answer questions about current abortion laws in Arizona. And I would add to that, is there now or will there be stood up a central resource for getting more information and signing up to do the petition?
Yes, we will have a website launching probably by the end of the week or next week.
Do you know
So
what
there
the-
will be resources very shortly, and I can send that to you, Michael, to share with folks.
Right.
I mean, we are just on the cusp of getting this all together. And there will be talking points there and ways to get petitions there. And then obviously we will have petitions at Democratic headquarters. We will have petitions at the Arizona List office, which is also the office for Mayor Romero. And I'm sure there will be other places in town where it will be easy to pick up petitions.
And Bridget wonders if there are organizations outside of Arizona that are going to be helping us.
So, so two things. One is that we know, and we have been in conversation with a lot of local Arizona organizations, more than the ones that I've mentioned, who will be supportive of this once there is a way to sign on. So for example, Lucha, SEIU, UFCW, all have expressed interest and will be hopefully getting involved once we have petitions and they're able to be signed. Outside of the state, I am speaking to a national organization next week. There are a couple of groups like the Fairness Project, which works out of California, that have worked in other red states to move them to purple, that are very interested in this, and they are doing a lot of support right now in Ohio. We also have folks that are interested from the DNC because they see this as a way to generate more enthusiasm for the Biden-Harris run. So there's a lot of national folks that are watching this, but they want to see, you know, that we're doing it before they get too involved.
A couple more questions in the chat, but I see George has a live question. Let's go ahead and defer to him.
Thanks, Mike. Kathy, this is George McGaffey from Green Valley Democrats. We're excited to finally get this going because that was the question that I'm constantly asked. When are these reproductive rights petitions coming? So thank you for doing this. The other thing is we look forward to you coming doing your presentation at the Green Valley Democrats. We've reached out, so thank you for reaching back to us. Two big events that would help these petitions. Elections are all about you picnic on October the 14th. And so put that, all the DGT members, put that on your calendar. Come down and visit LD21. We're expecting 300 to 500 people. That will be October. We hope your petitions are ready to go by then. The other thing is right after the first of the year, we will have a petition palooza. So we had at our last election, we had over 500 people go through that on a 6-hour period. And we definitely can be a gathering center spot for those people that want to pick up petitions in Green Valley too. So thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. All the hard work you guys do.
Okay. Mike, do you have any other questions from the chat room?
I have a few more. Let's see. I have a couple here that are factual in nature that maybe you can answer. One is, at what stage of pregnancy can tests be made for physical problems in the fetus?
Well, so we have some doctors on here who probably are better. I mean, as somebody, when I had my kids, they did tests all along the way. And I'm sure the technology has improved. So I don't want to say right now what they are. I know that there are tests that they used to do at 20 weeks. I don't know if they've accelerated the tests because of the abortion ban. This is what I would say are the unintended consequences, where, you know, a legislator makes a rule in a room, not thinking about the actual realities of the people's lives who are at stake. So I don't know if they are able to do those chromosomal tests before 20 weeks. That's when they used to do it. I assume that maybe some OBs are trying to accelerate that just because of the ban issue, but I don't know that for a fact.
James wants to know if you know how many clinics who do abortions presumably are currently operating in Arizona, or how many providers are in Arizona.
So we have 7 clinics right now in the state of Arizona. We are not an abortion desert, but we are pretty limited in our abortion services in the state of Arizona. And there is a really wonderful resource, which is called the abortion, it's Pro-Choice Arizona, and it is our abortion fund that helps women who have gotten past 15 weeks to find resources, but they have a clinic map on their website, and so you can see what clinics are available and who they serve. But the independent clinics in particular have been really vulnerable to the constant legal changes, because it's very difficult to schedule patients, cancel patients, not know what's legal, and without the sort of framework like Planned Parenthood of resources behind you, it's been really particularly hard on our independent abortion providers.
Shirley wonders, is Planned Parenthood and other organizations sending petitions to all their donors and members? I imagine that's one of the reasons why you have this rule that it should be a mass member organization joining the coalition.
Yeah. And we will be doing outreach to our members. So will NARAL. I know that the National Council of Jewish Women has already started to offer training sessions for their folks. Indivisible is going to be doing training sessions on how to complete petitions. And so I think that there will be a number of organizations that will be training their members in how to become petition gatherers.
Let's see. Lori Sentiment suggests that in the past, outside volunteer organizations came to Arizona as a battleground state, and there may be opportunities for people to host volunteers here in Arizona.
Yeah, I actually was having a conversation just yesterday with some folks in Yuma about this very question, because they believe that there will be folks that will come over from California to help be circulators. Again, we have to be very careful because of the rules around paid signature gathering. You have to be a resident in the state of Arizona if you are receiving funds to be a signature gatherer, and you have to register with the Secretary of State. So if any of you are thinking, oh, I want to do this as a paid signature gatherer, please know that you can't just click paid on your petition. You need to do some other things. Oh, Eve is answering. Thank you, Eve. I knew you were there. I think we need to just know we are in the process of getting bids from paid signature gathering firms, but we really want to try to do this as much as possible with volunteer signatures.
Yeah, that makes good sense. All right, a couple of additional comments in the chat, but no direct questions. So I encourage people to read the chat. It's lots of interesting ideas there. And if you want to save the chat at the end of this meeting, you can go down to the bottom of the chat window, and there's a little 3-dot hamburger button, and you just choose Save Chat, and it saves it in a folder as a text file.
Yeah, Gail has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the folks coming from California thing. We had volunteers coming in 2022 to canvass voters before the election. And so if volunteers not paid are out of state, are they able to collect signatures if they're non-Arizona residents?
So I am gonna hold on that because I would like to ask our legal team about whether or not, if you're a registered voter in the state of California, can you collect signatures in the state of Arizona as a volunteer? Because I believe you need to be a resident of the state of Arizona to collect signatures, but I don't know that for a fact. So I can get back to you, Gail, with an answer on that question.
I have a question of my own. That's, how do we give you money?
So first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say anybody that becomes a member of Arizona List, by virtue of being a member of Arizona List, definitely assists us with the effort, because all of our staff people are working on this initiative and will be working on this. And we will be talking to our candidates, because all of our candidates, last cycle, we worked with 115 women running across the state of Arizona. And one of the things that is nice about being a statewide organization is we have women running everywhere from Portal all the way to Yuma and Somerton. And so we're going to be encouraging all of them to carry these petitions. But the Arizona for Abortion Access initiative itself will also have a live website as soon as we file, and they will also be able to take donations. So I think that that's, going to be also important. But, I think in the long run, everything that you do for Democrats in 2024 is just going to be super important. And treasure is very important, and so is time. So I just appreciate all of you for taking the time to learn about this, but also to contribute, to give resources. We at Arizona List, they laugh at me. We are so frugal, but we are very careful. We are the little engine that could. We're a small organization, but we have 12 interns. So we are everywhere in the state with our young people on college campuses. We think that's going to be the key place to be collecting signatures for this initiative, as long as folks are registered to vote. So we're going to need to do some voter registration. And let me all say, and we know this, we should all be a little bit nervous about the registration numbers right now. And so carry with you, with your petition, a way to register voters, because we definitely need to be working on getting Democrats re-registered to vote if they have for whatever reason, they've moved to the state. We have a lot of new people in the state, but we also just are looking at the numbers and they're nerve-wracking. So hopefully.
Great. Well, Susie, you have another question.
Yeah, I was wondering, you spoke about young people, 12 interns. Are you getting a lot of young people, both men and women, interested in elections and the issues? What do you see on the horizon for that?
I mean, we have a lot of young people who are interested in, and particularly feeling like direct work with candidates is what they want to do. And so Arizona List usually pairs our interns with a particular candidate so they get some real life experience. And then we do trainings. So for example, last week we had Lorena Austin come in and talk about what it was like to be a young woman serving in the legislature. Got them all excited. And she talked about how she went from not going to college, going to Maricopa Community College, being hired there to work, and then making the decision from friends at Maricopa Community College to running for office. And I'm telling you, the interns by the end of it were so excited to see somebody who was in their path who'd made the decision to run for office. So, yeah.
Lauren is awesome. I have a question. With your Arizona List hat on, how important will it be and what advantages might it give us if we're able to take the state Senate and or state House in 2024 regarding the abortion issue.
Look, let me just talk about the Senate for a second. With Steve Kaiser resigning and Judy Schwiebert in LD2 making the decision to move from running for the House to running for the Senate, that already gives us a tied Senate seat right there. With the hard work of the folks in 17 to recall Justine Wadzak, plus Amy Fitch, who is a super strong candidate in 17, that's taking the Senate. We have the path already with strong women to take the Senate. All we have to do is maintain and get 2 absolutely solid candidates across the finish line. I think that's very possible. It's probably more possible than we've had in many years. When my father was in the Senate in 2000, it was a 50-50 Senate. And I want to say parity, oh, does that mean anything? It meant so much. Just give you an example of 3 bills that he passed in 2000 with a 50-50 Senate. He managed to pass eliminating the execution of juveniles. Before 2000, we executed juveniles, people who had committed crimes under 18 in the state of Arizona. And that was defeated with a 50-50 Senate. The same is true, blood alcohol level. You could drive with 0.08 in Arizona. That meant you could basically be super drunk and drive. They changed the blood alcohol level with a 50-50 Senate. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it saved a lot of lives. And then finally, we got Healthy Arizona implemented, which got 300,000 people in the state healthcare coverage by having a 50-50 Senate. That was huge. It changed the Medicaid level from 1/3 of the poverty line to 100% of the poverty line. The legislature technically had to approve it, but you know the legislature, technicalities don't always apply. But having a 50-50 Senate meant that the health committee could move things forward. And I just think, so parity would be good, but even majority would be better. So I think we do have the possibility there. The House is a little more complicated. The path isn't quite as clear, but we've got some great women running for the House as well. Brandy Reese, if some of you knew her from LD13, has moved and she will be running. We also have a new woman in LD2 who will be running for Judy Schwiebert's seat, Stephanie Spisak, who's very good. So we are looking to have some strong candidates, and Morgan Abraham will be a strong candidate in LD17. Yeah. So again, we have a path for both races. We just need to all be focused. And the final thing I will say is everybody who comes out to vote for the legislature will also vote for the president. Yeah. Not everybody who comes out for the president will vote for the legislature. So the more active that we are in helping people understand the importance of winning these seats in the legislature, we will also be doing our part to help the Biden-Harris team.
Yeah. Can you talk about how vital it is that we control the C-suites in the state government? We have the governorship, we have the attorney general, and we have the secretary of state. How does that help us in defending any constitutional amendment we were able to pass through initiative?
Well, I mean, we have been doing regular briefings with both Governor Hobbs and Attorney General Mays so that they are aware of what's happening. Obviously, ballot initiatives are nonpartisan. And so we want to have support from everyone. We have also been talking to our sitting senators. We've been talking to the congressmen. We've been talking to our mayors. Our mayors and our governor and our attorney general are the ones who have been holding the line until now to keep women from being prosecuted in this state. Mayor Romero was the first after the Dobbs resolution was passed, and then Mayor Gallego and Mayor Daggett followed with ruling that people could not be prosecuted in their cities. And that was followed on the Dobbs anniversary by proclamation from the governor and the attorney general to keep doctors and patients from being prosecuted. But all of them are very invested in us passing this initiative. So it doesn't just have to be a defense, but can be an offense.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't see any further in the chat, and I have no further myself. So I'd certainly invite people to raise their hands or to put their questions in chat. We have an excellent resource here, and Catherine Nichols, not only on this upcoming initiative, but her deep experience in Arizona politics gives her a lot of leeway to answer a lot of questions. Looks like Barbara Warren has her hand up.
You hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Kathy, would you please put the address, mailing address, for how to make a donation to the Arizona list in the chat?
I think that I can do that. I think maybe my lovely finance person is on. If she can do that. She is, there she is. She's doing it. Thank you, Linda. Some of you may know Linda Quinn. She has been our data director queen for as long as Arizona List has been, well, not as long as we've been around because we're 20 years this year, but she has been our wonderful database manager and keeps us legal, files all of our important reports. So she's put the address there. I would also say, you know, and some of you know that we are going to have some battles on the school board front as well. And I just want to say that the school board races are going to be very critical. That's become the new playground for the fundamentalist right in this state. And they have been going from place to place and harassing folks. So I just, we are very excited that we have some new women that are being brave and standing up to run for office. But if any of you followed the Catalina Foothills parent situation, that is going to be a difficult race. And we also have Marana School Board. That district has been extraordinarily difficult. So just, you know, please don't sit out 2024. Pick a candidate and get involved because folks are going to need you.
Okay, well, Catherine, what a wonderful presentation, and you know, taking on all the great questions, and really salute you for your leadership, your passion, and your hard work. Really glad you're our leader on this. So, Mike, thank you for setting up another great program. See everybody next week, and I'm sure we'll have another great program. So take good care. Let's get going.